Grace and peace.
What up, sir? How are you?
What's going on, bro? How are you?
Good, man. I did get to meet you that one time in Queens.
Yeah, we did.
So we
at
we
Richie
have
Records.
conversated. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
We have conversated before, and we actually coming up around the anniversary of that time, right? That the GOM tour always comes through Queens.
Oh, well, I'm not sure. I don't keep track of time as well, past wise. But yeah, I remember we chopped it for a little bit for sure.
Me, you, and DJ Val.
Yeah.
But that was dope. That was a dope night.
Yeah, it was. It was, of course. It was good to be there. Plus, that's my native. I'm a native New Yorker, so it's always good to be back there.
Yeah, whenever I get to talk to somebody who has some sort of semblance of an accent that's similar to mine,
Right.
I always feel good. I'm like, oh, okay. This guy's not going to judge me too much for the bad way that I pronounce things or undoubtedly mess words up.
Oh wow, yeah, it's been different for me in Texas. Like, no one here speaks the way I speak. You know what I'm saying? So that's how it goes.
Yeah, it happens. All right, so everybody joining from Voss's page, my name is Justin. I'm the editor of Rapzilla.com. This is Community During Chaos. Every week, I get together with 3 different guests to talk about our community, how we can be leaders, spreading positivity during this negative time. A lot of craziness in 2020. How do we navigate through it? And we're hearing from, some of the leaders in the space and, just getting their advice, getting their words. And this is a conversation that's open to everybody, male, female, black, white, Hispanic. I've had all sorts of people on here, whether their platform's huge, whether their platform is small. Everybody's voice matters when it comes to these issues.
All voices matter.
All voices matter. Hashtag. So I see a lot of grow the heck up people in here. They came to support.
Praise God. Salute. Grow the heck up.
Grow the heck up. So my first question to you is the same for everybody. You're 2020.
Right.
How has it been? How have you gotten through it? Just give us that navigation process through this year.
It's been crazy for everyone. I don't know if it's been any different for me because I think experiences vary so widely depending on how bad it was in your area, whether or not you were an essential worker, you know what I'm saying, what you did for a living, whether or not you have children, all of those things play a role in how the pandemic hit you, how much money you had in the bank. All of those things played a role. But we fared okay, man, because we were forced to think very intentionally about our future. And my wife and I, and it's caused us to make some decisions in our lives about where we want our next, year, 2, 3 years, 4 or 5 year plan to be. So, I would say it's been difficult. I'm not going to act like it's been all the way up, but I can say truly it's been very fruitful. It's been very fruitful because difficult times always show you what you're made of. When you're younger, you don't really like to see what you're made of. You know what I'm saying? When you go through a situation and stuff comes pouring out of you, that's what's in you. Sometimes people like to blame the circumstance. Like, oh, I'm stressed. So, this is what I said, or my boss is getting on my nerves. So I snapped at you. That's what's in your heart. It just took the boss at work to kind of bring it out. So, I'm at a mature enough point in my life where when ugly stuff comes out, when I'm squeezed, I can I don't like to look at it. It's ugly, but I can rejoice because I've come to really appreciate the work that God said, he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it and see it through to the end. And he often does some of the greatest work in the valley, not the mountain. The mountain feels the best. We love being on the top, but the older you get and you appreciate the work of God in your life a little bit more, and you can kind of look at difficult times with hope and joy, even in difficulty and uncertainty.
Yeah, it's taking that lump of coal and turning it into diamonds. It's just taking advantage of, all right, so the world may be chaotic all around me, but what I see in front of me is what I got to focus on, and how can I take that, whether it be my family, my job, my career, whatever it is, and keep that going. I know for a lot of people that I've spoken to on here, and relatable to yourself, when you have children and a family, you'll never ever have a time like this again where you're just all together as a family unit. Spending time. No one's at school, no one's at work. You're just all together in the house. You're being a family. You may never get that time again. So you got to find that those silver linings in everything that's going on. And for me, that was one of them. I'm at home with my kids and my wife. It's like, oh man, we're all at home together, man.
Right.
Like, no, that's great. Like, that's awesome.
For sure.
So for you,
if you don't have to worry about an empty refrigerator.
Right. Right.
Because the kind of person that brings out of you sometimes is not always pretty to see. So, you know, alcoholism is up a little bit. The divorce rate is going up a little bit because, again, not that the pandemic created these things, but I think it allowed some festering things to come out too. So, you know, I feel like it's bittersweet, you know, like all things work together for the good of them that love God. Even if my time during COVID was lit, I wouldn't be on here like, oh, it was lit, because I mean, you know, so many people truly are going through so much worse than what I would have even said was a problem. So, you know. Yeah.
And but then at the same time too, it's also okay for you to be able to celebrate any victories you had without feeling bad about it, because you shouldn't have to be brought down from other people's situations.
There you go.
You can empathize. You can work with them. You can help them. But at the same time, it's like, hey, if you know, I have joy and celebration, like, let me have joy and celebration.
For sure.
So
for sure.
It's just a weird time. It really is just a weird time.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
So for you, you're definitely somebody, and that's why I was excited to have you here, that you use your platform to break down these dialogues, these facts, these misconceptions about things. So first, before we dive into that stuff, what gave you that mentality and sort of that passion to be that guy, to be that, you know, that voice that cuts through?
I don't know, man. I got saved reading the book of, hey, Brooklyn, my dog is here. Brooklyn now. As soon as I get on live, you hear me talking. You got to go, baby. So, pardon me, guys. So when I got saved, I was reading Proverbs a lot. That was just a book that I got saved on. And I just always saw the premium that God put on knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And I remember the first scripture that I was convicted by, that I remember being truly convicted by, I didn't know it was conviction then, it just hit me, was fools hate correction. You know, because I used to hustle with a lot of like pretty smart dudes. Like when we knew it, we were like the smart drug dealer types or whatever. Perfect example, one of my guys who's always on my lives, my man Eyes, you know, we're chilling, hanging out one day, probably after doing some criminally nefarious activity or whatever. We go hang out in the white neighborhood where some of our friends were. And and that's going to be an interesting conversation when it comes to racism. But so we're hanging out, right?
We'll get there. Know, we'll build it up.
Right. So we're hanging in one of our homeboys' basements or whatever. And they pull out a chess set. I never played chess before. My man just starts killing everybody, like line after line. Now, he's from the projects with me. I'm like, where'd you learn to play chess? Right? Not that they don't play chess in the projects. I just never knew this side of you. Yeah. He was like, oh, yeah, I was chess champion in Madison Square Garden when I was 15 years old. Right. And he's selling drugs with me. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Which also plays into a lot of the way I approach race relations today, because I didn't grow up with like idiots. I grew up with people doing idiot stuff. I grew up with very capable individuals where a lot of our households weren't raising us this way. Everybody wasn't like born to a crack baby or none of that. We had choices. We saw people in the projects making good decisions. We saw people in the projects making bad decisions. And many of us that made bad decisions did so against the will and advisement of our parents and households. But that being said, bro, when I got saved, I always, you know, that was very humbling to me because we couldn't correct each other or any of that. So when the scripture says he who hates correction is stupid, that was the first time my metric for like intelligence began to change. And I begin to see why the word fool came to be what it is. You know, the Bible uses the word fool to talk about moral bankruptcy. You know, character and virtue is never separate from being a fool. It has nothing to do with what you got on your SAT. And so, you know, and once I the things that God was saying about knowledge, wisdom, and understanding in the Bible, it was just mind blowing to me. It talks about wisdom fills your coffers with treasures. You know, a good name is better than silver. You know, introducing these concepts. And even now, I'm older in real estate. You know, when somebody wants to buy a house, what do? They need to have a good name. And so the practicality of the Bible is what first blew my mind. That it wasn't heavenly concepts. It wasn't hell. It wasn't the regeneration of the soul. It didn't answer, but it was speaking directly to my human nature with this practical wisdom and morality. and it just kind of put me on a quest for it. And I just became very hungry for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, as it were. Yeah.
Dope. Yeah. And moving away a little bit from that, but kind of on that same vein,
yeah,
like your Grow the Heck Up page got banned.
Yeah.
Your original one. So that's you. I know on your page, you know, you stick to your guns. You're putting truths out on social media, and then that was just wiped away.
Right.
So can you talk about kind of that censorship of ideologies that you see a lot on social media, and why do you think people that are trying to like have these conversations, when they're not the popular ones, they have to be canceled?
I think it boils down a little bit to ideology. You know, there are a group of people who think that, again, just speaking for myself, I want the worst ideas to be heard. I just want them to be heard alongside the other ideas. And I think that all ideas need to be heard. And I do think the best ideas will rise to the top. When people claim that your ideology is so stupid, so silly, so crazy, so wrong, and yet they are even unwilling to let other people hear what you have to say, that's a bit suspicious to me. Because I'm anxious for you to hear how silly whatever I think is, you know, whatever opposing view I think. So, you know, it boils down to the worldview. And then there's also the sensitivity thing. There are a group of people who kind of raised, you know, very thin skinned, and they think that protecting people from things that are unpleasant is the way to make them strong. I just don't happen to agree with that. You know, and sometimes it shows up in parenting, right? Like I've always been the kind of dad, when the kid fall, I'm waiting to see if the kid is really hurt first, right? Because if you begin to coddle you know, for some of us who have kids, we know once we say, "Oh my God, are you okay?" the kid starts crying. There are plenty of times where young people, kids will fall and everybody react, and I say, "Chill." The kid looks around, nobody's tripping. I ain't tripping. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of us have been kind of trained to be like that way, and it's almost like a virtue now, right? Rescuing people from things that are difficult to hear. But you know, but I also don't think that jives with the culture that hip hop produced in me. You know, all of this super hypersensitivity. Oh my God, clutch my pearls. He has to be canceled. And then you go listen to Future talking about he's pulling out his penis and pissing on women. Excuse my language, right? So again, the kind of false a sense of morality and outrage over what people have to say, it's just bugged out to me, coming from the projects, coming from the gutter, knowing that I was around for the first iteration of what Cardi B is now. I was around when Biggie put Lil' Kim to the forefront, right? And music got sexualized. And so now we live in this age where, you know, people are selectively deciding what they think people should and should not hear. And I think that those are ideologies for weak-minded people.
Yeah, I think there's a good lesson that kind of just came to me when you're talking about the kid falling down, and even, you know, wait till they cry to see if they're hurt. But a lot of times, even when my son is 1 year old, so sometimes he'll fall and the reaction is so big to him falling that it actually scares him into crying.
True.
So that's kind of like,
you,
he's crying because of our reaction towards him, because he's a baby. Like, everybody just yelled, jumped up. So that's kind of like what's happening around too. It's like, I fell down, you know, am I hurt or whatever? Oh, but everyone has such a reaction to me. I guess I'll just cry because that's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not that you are not interested in whether or not your child is hurt, but you also don't want to feed a victim narrative, because, you know, our flesh is weak. We all of us want to, you know, the Bible talks about things like not complaining and grumbling. I mean, some of us, we think that's part of our personality. But God says it's not cool. So, you know, the management of emotions and the management and the soberness of mind to think clearly through what you feel is very important. The biggest lesson we have of that is David. David gave worship and praise in anger and sadness, probably wrote some of those worship songs to God while he was even in lust. And so the management of emotions, man, has been, especially as a person who grew up not knowing how to manage his emotions, especially from the hood, from the projects, when you're a man and you're taught that, oh, I don't have any feelings. Forgetting that anger itself is an emotion. Right? So most men who say, I don't really, you know, I'm not sensitive to that, but they get angry quickly. They don't realize that that's the same sensitivity as when you see a woman cry at a movie. you are not in control of your emotions. So nothing wrong with crying at movies. I'm just trying to make a point. I don't cry at movies, but, you know, it's all good.
There's got to be at least one movie that made you cry.
One movie.
What is it?
I went to see Brave with my daughters, and the story was my real life in my house, and it made me cry at the movie theater. Only time.
So you grew up in Scotland, and people were turning into bears around you. Yeah, I get it. I've been there too.
That's exactly what happened to me, sir. And you know what? You would do well to respect my experience. You don't know what it's like.
I'm gonna cry now.
Real quick. One time I go to the. This is just my personality, bro. You know, and I don't think everything that your personality gives you is correct, right? But so I'm in the movie theater, man. I've just seen. Here's the thing. I've seen like real death, though. You know what I'm saying? And so I just begin. And I heard a poet. I heard a Muslim poet say this like 10 years ago on YouTube, but I can't find it. He was saying we cry at movies and films, but we are stoic toward real life suffering. You walk past people with no legs, no arms, broke, disgusted, beat up, all of that, and it's not you don't hate them, but then I give you a picture, decide what the person is going to look like, because I don't know if you guys know, but they do psychological studies on the shapes of faces and what they evoke. That's why when you look at Disney and Hollywood and all of that, the villains with the long chin, you know, they talk about how certain people have pleasurable shaped faces or whatever. So you're being manipulated beyond what you could ever imagine. They say they think curly hair people are less intelligent. So the dope in the movies is always okay. But I digress. So they put this picture in front of you. They start playing some music, create the scenario, decide who they want you to love or hate. And now you're crying in a movie theater and you read the New York Times where people dying, shot, killed, stabbed, everything, and you don't shed a tear.
Yeah, it's wild.
Just saying.
It's wild.
So no, I don't cry at movies. I was at Infinity War. Spider-Man got killed. You probably know by now. And then I'm in the movie theater and I hear turn around, some dude crying. Then I start hearing them all over the movie theater. And I'm sorry, that just took me back to my thuggery. I just felt like a thug in the movie theater. I wasn't crying.
You got to know Spider-Man comes back too. There was a part 2.
Hey, I cried, just not for Spider-Man.
People don't pay attention. Bizzle said you didn't cry during My Girl when Macaulay Culkin got stung.
Nah.
That was tough. That was tough.
Nah.
All right. Now, all right, we'll move on from.
I'm not beyond crying in movies. I'm just having a little fun, but it's true though.
I know. I'm with you, man. This is 2 New York City guys joking, because you know we're hardened people from New York City.
Right. That's true.
All right, so let's talk about narratives. Sure. So there is a mainstream narrative, and then there's the not popular narrative. So how do you decipher the two, even if everyone is saying that your particular narrative is wrong?
Because I'm never alone. Never. Like,
I thought you were going to say I'm never wrong.
Right. But you know what? If you're never alone, you might be close to it because there are principles at work. The Bible says in the multitude of counselors, there's safety. The Bible says by wise counsel wage war. You know, the Bible talks about the foolish man who is wiser in his own eyes than 7 who can answer sensibly. So one of the ways I've always been able to cut through, you know, and Bizzle's on here, he could testify. This is how we've been getting down for 10 years. This is like how my relationships are kind of built on truth and honesty. So it's almost like I'm always subject to challenge. You know what I'm saying? And just full disclosure, like there'd be times when Bizzle's questioning me on something I said or posted or thought I had. And I don't feel like talking to him for 20 minutes really about it, to be honest. But I've given him that position. I'm going to talk 2-3 months. He could come bing bong, ring my bell and be like, yo, what's up with that? Oh, here we go, right? And I stand on my square. Sometimes I feel him, sometimes I don't. And so I try to keep my life open to wise counsel, not to anybody, because, you know, you should have enough people in your life. I always find it strange when as a figure, for Grow the Heck Up or rapping or whatever. And by the way, if you don't know, I'm an old head. I'm a former Christian rapper, Houston real estate agent. Presently, I run a brand called Grow the Heck Up. So when people reach out to me for prayer, I always oblige when I can. But I have always been curious about why they're reaching out to a stranger on the internet for prayer. Now, there's nothing wrong with it because I'll oblige you. And sometimes we don't have people. We go through different seasons. I get it. Yeah. But I try to make it so I'll never be in a place where I can't pick up a phone and call somebody who knows me and ask them to pray. You know what I'm saying? And so staying connected to people and not necessarily needing agreement on what I believe, I just need to know that this person is a person who esteems wisdom. They do their best to walk in integrity. They're trying to live a righteous life, and they're seasoned and they're thinking, and they're not people who buy into everything. And so I don't look at it like, oh, this is the narrative I'm going counter, because my views have changed too. I've changed my views on a lot of things over the years. So I think doing your best to surround yourself with wise people will save you a lot of trouble.
Okay. Now let's get into this. So 2020, one of the biggest themes of this show and for the year has been the civil unrest, really kickstarted by what happened with George Floyd.
Yeah, tragic.
And speaking about systemic racism and the idea of Black Lives Matter over the organization of Black Lives Matter. So how has all this racial dialogue, impacted you and kind of, I guess, shaped some of your thoughts on everything that's been going on?
Man, that's a really large open-ended question. So I'll try to keep it brief, and if it's not as pointed as you would like, let me know.
Yeah.
What I begin to see is that so here's how my journey went with race. I'm a Black man in America. My experience is so statistical, like no dad, like I'm divorced, like I'm married twice, both times in a blended family, right? Spent my last 20 years raising kids as my own that I did not bring into this world. So when I talk about fatherlessness, it's different. Like I fit almost every statistic you could imagine from the projects, right? Been to jail, locked up, sold drugs, joined a gang, all of that. And when I started to look at Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, even Martin Luther King, and I started to take together Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois. When I started to look at those people who contributed to Black empowerment over the years, I started to notice that they didn't sound anything like today's social justice warriors. They didn't sound like Shaun King. It's a whole different thing. And I'm like, well, what are these guys talking about? That's not how the Black Panthers talk. Now, I felt like the spirit of the civil rights movement and the names of these people are being invoked. And most people, if you're not reading it, somebody could tell you Malcolm X said something and then run with it. So I just started seeing it was more of a victim narrative, for me anyway, from what I understood. And then I also began to notice, when I'm having conversations with people, they don't realize always because, hey, God, I clean up okay. God has done a work in me. You really can't tell where I'm from all the time. You know what I'm saying? People are arguing with me about all these hood dynamics and they don't ever walk into projects. I still walk into projects like it's not any hood. I'm not scared to walk in anyone's hood. It's not because it can't happen to me, but I'm very comfortable is what I'm trying to say. And I begin to encounter people in CHH and all these different people who think they're defending and representing a dynamic that they're not even in touch with. Because if you were, you won't even realize you're standing here talking to somebody that's from the gristle. Right. And so I started to see a lot of that. And I started to be like, I think you might be mischaracterizing the hood. They can't read. They don't have computers. Nobody can do this. And it ain't that. It ain't that. I've been saying this for, again, 20 years. You go back and look at my videos when I'm talking to children in the classroom. I'm telling them, everybody in the hood is not full of gangsters. As a matter of fact, let's do this. Let's do statistics since we're going to talk about the unarmed killing of Black men statistics. The FBI estimates that only 2% of Black men engage in violent crime. That's a very small number. So if only 2% of Black men are engaged in violent crime, yet crime is such a huge problem in these areas, what does that tell you? A couple of things. One, that is an oppression that is being ignored. You have a minority using their power, and a lot of it goes into gun laws if we want to talk politics, using their power to subjugate these neighborhoods. And nobody sees that as oppression. As a matter of fact, you know what we do? We elevate the oppressors and give them Grammys. Right. We elevate the killers, the gangsters, the drug dealers, the people that tell you they kick down your door, oppressing your grandmother, but you think the white man who's coming to gentrify you is the oppressor. So yeah, racism is real. I haven't found in the past couple of years that I've been discussing it, that it rises to the level of importance or priority of the people who seem to be making all of their money and clout off of people being invested in racism. I don't hear any, and I still put this challenge out. I never put no money on it, but I may put money on it one day. I challenge anyone to find me social justice warriors that talk about personal responsibility in regards to economic empowerment. Because if you can get your own money, what happens? You need the government less. Right. You start investing collectively with the 8 people in your church, and you guys start buying up the block for real and rehabbing and flipping, and you become economically independent. There's nothing Sean King can do for you, sir. Right. So sometimes I feel that the people who are fighting for racial injustice, they have a vested interest in you needing them. Like every solution always involves them. Come with me. I'll take you to the, not go home and love your wife. Right. It's always come with me up over here to defeat the big bad white devil. Never go home and love your children. Be faithful to them. Stop playing Cardi B in the car in the morning. Right. It's never about talking to people about what is in the power of their own hand to do. Now, that may be for 2 reasons. 1, because if you see you're powerful without me, then you don't need me. But also, it can be offensive. Barack Obama talked about the prevalence of fatherlessness in the Black community. It was the last speech. If anybody wants to check the transcript, it was the last speech he gave before he became president. The last speech he gave as a senator was in a church on Father's Day. Talked about fatherlessness in the Black community. They said he talking down. So you can't even have the conversation without people playing the flip game. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts to start.
No, you good. This is what I wanted from you. So would you say that inherently the narrative towards Black people is racist in itself? Like almost Black people thinking like that oppressed sort of narrative is racist itself?
I think so, because I think that there are Black people and white people who have brought into the stereotypes of Black people's ability to achieve based on the power of racism. And there's no thought, let me not say no thought. There's not much thought, study, and interest going to people who have made it and how. When Diddy's on Instagram telling, yeah, take that, you could do it, don't let nobody stop you. Nobody tells Diddy, we can't, we're Black. We say, yeah, that's right, we about to get it, we out here. What are you talking about? It's only when you bring this big bad racist boogeyman that everybody turns into small fries. Sorry, it doesn't make me shrink that way, right? And so when I look at the dynamic of what is possible, Ben Carson, the one that they call a coon, the one that they call an Uncle Tom, where if anybody uses Uncle Tom as an insult, they're definitely uneducated and ignorant, but I digress. I used to do the same thing, it's okay. But Ben Carson, for instance, his mother cleaned houses. His mother cleaned rich people's houses, went to, and started to notice 2 things about rich households, rich white households. 1, they didn't have many televisions. 2, they made their kids read books a lot. Mm-hmm. And so she came home and implemented that in her own household. She was illiterate. Ben Carson didn't know. Ben Carson overheard a phone call where somebody exposed the fact that his mother was illiterate. So you mean to tell me Ben Carson was raised by an illiterate woman, an illiterate Black woman, was raised a brain surgeon, and he's the sellout? But T.I. and all of these people who promote misogyny and destruction to the community get to be heroes? Sorry, I got a different metric. I got a different metric. I can't accept that. And it's not my fault that you're ignorant. So, I'm on one tonight, but you know how we do it.
Yeah, I always find it amazing how, because of cancel culture or woke culture, that somebody who is in such esteem or high regard can literally go from like the top of the world, and after one bad tweet, let's just say, they're gone. They're wiped off the face of the earth. No grace, no nothing. And it's like, these are people that were championed. And take for example, the up and down roller coaster of John McCain, who at one point oh, this is an American hero, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And then he did something, and then all the liberals were like, we hate John McCain. And then John McCain did something to offend the Republicans, and all the Republicans like, we hate John McCain. And the liberals were like, we love John McCain. So he like went up and down, and then he died, and everyone was like, well, I guess he was a good guy.
I guess he was okay.
It was just like,
okay, well, you know what? I'm glad you said that, sir. I'm glad you said that, sir, because here's something I would like to address with that. There's something I neglected to say. I came to terms with my own deception. John Lewis, I think that's the one who died. I always get the two older civil rights gentlemen mixed up. John Lewis and the other guy. But
John Lewis recently, I think, passed away. Right?
If I'm not John Lewis, he talked about how I needed to vote for Barack in 2008 because of how racist John McCain was. And then when this is recent, you can go look up what I'm saying.
Yes.
Then when John McCain dies, you eulogize him and say he's awesome. Wait a minute, that was only 8 years ago or so. Did he change? And if he did you know? So you go see, and this is what I feel like racism is real, but Kanye said it well. He know we are a proud and emotional people. That's part of our culture, right? And so when you use these puppet strings of race, sometimes we get in our feelings. So it's almost like you a black leader from the civil rights movement. You tell me this guy's racist in 2008. Now he dies and you celebrate him. Where's the same energy? Oh, you're just willing to say anything about anybody to make me do what you need me to do. Racism is the boogeyman. Doesn't mean it's not real. See, because most things that you can scare people with are real, right? Like the you know, the IRS can have this fear because it is possible that they can come for you and audit you. It's not impossible, but I feel like people are using it to direct the will and emotions of people in a way that is not necessarily in their own best interest, but in the interest of what the politicians want them to do and be.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just that it's the convenient forgetfulness to fit, again, the narrative of what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And I'm no examples. I'm just saying, like, when you have presidents and then the person they pick as their running mate, these people were opposing sides for a long time. They were throwing mud at each other for months, years, and all of a sudden we're on the same team. All right, we're cool. Yeah. Meanwhile, 6 months ago, they were trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
It's just whatever fits your narrative.
But we'll talk about that at some point if you want. It's cool.
All right, let me talk about something. I didn't have it as a question, but it sparked a lot of dialogue. When Portia was on, she spoke about being pro-black.
Oh yeah.
And I knew I saw you in the comments there. I saw Meech in the comments. So can we maybe break that down?
Well, respectfully, love. I never heard of or familiar with it before tonight. Respectfully, I love the sister's energy, but I also think that she was wrong. I think that when the Bible talks about races, even and genetic distinctions, those are not based on color. That is a relatively new phenomenon in history. Before the 1800s, people were characterized their race. The word race and the idea of race was around, but it wasn't based on superficials of appearance. It was based on your bloodline. Even in the Bible, the bloodline comes from the man. So if a Hebrew man marries someone from a different nation, that child is half Hebrew by the father. That's race. It's not based on color. 1800s come along, Darwinism popularizes the idea of different types of humans, like species of animals, and he didn't create it, but he definitely propagated it. And after, I think it was Origin of Species, it became wildly popular. So it is a created thing. So God didn't make you black. God made you whatever color you are, for sure. And he delights in beauty and diversity based on the fact that we are all diverse. But that construct of black, it's created by man. National Geographic even apologized for their racial reporting over the years, because even though they had to acknowledge that there is no scientific basis for race on the way we take it today. So it used to be like English race, Irish race. And another great example I had of this before it became so prevalent to talk about here, I went to Africa. Me and Bissell, shout out to the homies, taking me some great places. We did 5 countries, 9 cities. We lived in Africa for a month, traveling around. And it was the Africans, the African black people who told me, like, you know, we don't really see each other as the same just because we're Africa. He said, my man said, we're trying to push toward that now, but it's really more like to copy like the model and be one Africa. But generally speaking, we're tribal. Like, she's from Kosa,
Yeah.
I'm from this one. And they started busting that down to me and said, these are our races. Oh, wow, they retained the ancient true idea of race. So yes, God made all man from one. Acts 17, if I'm not mistaken, he talks about many races or something like that from one man, but the races are not black and white. Those are created constructs, and the biggest tip-off should be that nobody's really black, and nobody, well, some people are close to it, but nobody's really white. They're fake.
All right, so yeah. So let me ask you this. I saw this. I was part of this conversation on Twitter. I wasn't trying to be part of this conversation, but I got roped in because that happens to me all the time.
No doubt. I see how.
When somebody says the idea of black culture, and somebody told me that there is no such thing as black culture. What is black culture? What do you mean by that? Right. Do you agree, disagree? What do you think?
I think there is black culture, and I don't think the problem is that there's black culture. I think the same problem might be with American culture, in that it's commercialized and co-opted and not developed it organically, right? You got a whole freaking 300 million people watching television, and they're telling you what they want American to be. They're framing this culture for you. So it's commercialized and co-opted. That's the problem with black culture. It's being controlled by dollars, ad revenue, industries, you know, people with agendas, prison industrial complex, and whatever else people are invested in doing with and for and to black people. So it's not a problem that there's black culture. The problem is that's a narrative too. Because how is it so coinky-dink? What a coinky-dink that every stereotype you find from slavery times is the exalted standards that you find in hip hop. Black women were sexualized. You looked at James Marion Sims, I think, founder of pioneering in gynecology, and all of these people that did experiments on black women because they thought that black women were hypersexual and didn't feel pain. All of these stereotypes just happen to be in rap music. Oh, but we're in control of that. That's another thing too. That's not a black idea. That's a white supremacist idea of what a black man is. That you think that this ghetto culture, that really a lot of it is white culture. If you want to do a history lesson on that, we can. Jump in the Broom came from Europe. It didn't come from Africa. There are a lot of things that slaves picked up that came from hillbilly culture, but that's another story. So, yeah, there is black culture, but I don't let it dictate any of what I am and I'm supposed to do, because everything has a culture. Rapzilla has a culture, you know, within your circle, you know. Microsoft has a culture. So, yeah, there's black culture, but I just in no way let it dictate or identify who I am or what I do.
All right, let me see. Let me get to some comments. Let's see. Czar Josh, stereotypes of black people stem from and were conceived by slavery and racist propaganda, not hip hop.
Yeah, right. And now hip hop endorses it. So what do you mean not hip hop? What are you talking about? Every time Biggie said he had a gun, we was going to cop it. When he said he had a Coogee, we wanted to go get it. When he said he drank something, we hit the liquor store Friday, put our money together to get it. So it doesn't, so because it didn't create it and originate it, it's off the hook for propagating it. Come on now, let's be real. 7,000 black men die of homicide, celebrated on the radio every day across the country. Nobody bats an eye. Come on now. Come on now, you want to talk about the power of imagery? Let's talk about the fact that Nichelle Nichols, Lieutenant Uhura from Star Trek back in the days, she was about to leave Star Trek, bro. And do you know what happened the day before she was about to leave Star Trek? She met Martin Luther King on the set. And Martin Luther King said, "You are the only program we let our daughter stay up late for. You can't go to Broadway." She wasn't even like dissatisfied. She just said she was about to break out and go do Broadway. Martin Luther King said, "No, we need you here. You are a great representation. We let our daughter stay up to watch you," right? It doesn't stop there. The first real black woman who ended up in space was inspired by Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek. Why don't we teach that to our kids? So she saw a fiction character and she went into real space. Right. So I'm not trying to hear it matters when we're fighting for representation. Like the young lady said before me, she said, there are not many people at the top like me. I mean, well, let's talk about the other let's talk about the other side of that. That what are the most exalted images of black women right now? Just saying. So yeah, I know it has its place, and it doesn't originate, but propaganda works. That's why young white girls in the suburbs think they're fat when they're not. Right.
It's because of what they hear and absorb,
and what they see and what has been
it
fed
becomes
to them.
part of them.
False standards constructed in their mind of what they're measuring themselves against. Young black kids do the same thing. Listen, I don't like to say what I do because I talk a lot of greasy stuff, but just know I work around kids every single day. Every single work day I'm around children. So I'm seeing all different ages and who adapts to. Well, that's a whole nother story. I don't even think we have time for my experiences in education. But if I'm not talking about this is another problem.
Yeah.
I know every kid that listens to a drug dealer rap song is not gonna go out and sell drugs, but I got a list of like 20 people who did, and I know them for real. People who listened to the music, identified with it, became everything that they thought they should be in their music because they did not have that father at home. And we were emulating a lot of these things that weren't even in our house. So just saying. So here's why I get mad, Justin, is because if I were in a different mental space in my life, and if I was listening to a lot of these people who talk about the disadvantages and stuff like that, I would think I couldn't do anything. I thank God that God got a hold of me and what was possible and what you could do when you hold yourself accountable and personal responsibility. And I just think that, I don't know, man. You get all these Christians on this bandwagon talking about Amazon doesn't pay taxes and all. It's just, listen, man, I just wonder how much of it is lack of education, bro. I'm just going to keep it real because the Lord has allowed me to matriculate into spaces in life. And, it kind of woke me up. Like when I started coding, you go hang around certain kinds of folks, you start talking, you start hearing, and your world is hip hop. You know what I mean? And you're saying something that's your whole world. Like, you remember what happened on this podcast or this song, and they're like, no, we don't know that. And I'm like, I thought this was something the whole world was tuned into. And, so I just began to come to face with the reality that the majority of the direction that my life went in that was negative, it was because I brought into a counterproductive culture. Mm-hmm. They did the Brookings Institute, which is not a right or Republican kind of thing. The Brookings Institute is largely left-leaning. They did a study and they found that 3 things that kids need to do to get out of poverty: finish high school, don't have children before you're married or 25, and find full-time employment. 97% of the people who they survey out of thousands were all made it from poverty to the middle class. But those are not the values that are pushed in hip hop. And I'll give you this last example, Justin. Yeah. When I was doing ministry in New York, it was in the projects. I knew it was the projects. They act like it's the projects. We there, we cool, we chilling, like it's nothing, right? Like I understand, like your mom's on drugs, and it's what it is. You're dealing with at-risk kids, right? Cool. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure it's in New York, but I didn't experience it until I moved here. I'm dropping kids off in $500,000 houses and they acting like thugs still. And I'm like dropping them home like, one kid got dropped off in my neighborhood. I didn't even know he lived in a house where I didn't even know there were houses that nice so close to me. I live in like a modest suburb. I made a turn and a left and a right. I'm like, what's this neighborhood? Many mansions. And you see these kids who have the same opportunities. We live in a decent school district. There's not much violence or anything like that in our neighborhood or our area. But I see, not all of them, but I see a group of young black kids who have no quote unquote societal or economic disadvantages who have bought into the idea of, watch this, Justin, that is what it means to be black. So they're not just saying, I want to be like this rapper. They think that that's part of what being black is, not taking no itch, talking crazy to your teacher, ready to pop off, whatever other stereotypes you might associate with, watch this, hip hop. Mm-hmm. There are a bunch of young people across the country walking around with the idea that that's black. Sometimes it's embarrassing. Sometimes I see a mixed crowd of kids. White kids all quiet when the black kids start talking. They start talking about race, and they are exalting these same stereotypes. Like, shoo, I'm black. I ain't doing this. I'm black. I ain't saying that. I ain't wearing it. And they are promoting it. And these kids are like on the same football team, same basketball team. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder what this white kid's going to grow up and think. because a black kid just told him this is what it means to be black. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? So, yeah.
I see, specifically in the comments, I see Czar Josh and Rockstar JT. I feel like you two specifically, that I'm not calling you guys out, but I'm saying your names. Like, you're disagreeing with Voss. So if you can put together like an actual rebuttal or question, like as a talking point, you know, I'd love to get to that.
Because I'm from the turf, man. I'm from the turf. I was a little nerdy kid. My sister always told me to go to school and read. And that's what I was doing. Streets got a hold of me. Hip hop got in my headphones. I started talking different. And little thing I had where my sister used to be a corrections officer in jail. So I'm getting into hip hop. I start rapping. I'm just being quote unquote me.
Mm-hmm.
But she used to say things now I didn't realize until I look back. She used to be like, why are you talking like that? I'm like what? And she's like, you're just talking with your hands and just doing all this extra stuff. She's like, I'm like, that's me. I'm just being me. You know what she was seeing? She was watching my innocence turn into the caricature of what she sees every day in the prison, and it concerned her. And she's like, where are you getting this from? This is not how we talk. Like, what's going on? I'm like, well, it's me. This is me. Red man. You know what I'm saying? I mean, unless you're ready to have a real conversation about not you, Justin, but about the true reality of what this rap means to us. Because you can't in one breath, Justin, say black girl magic and we are magic and everybody want to be us and it's so influential and it's so powerful and all of this. But nah, fatherless kids pumping NBA Youngboy 12 hours a day on their headphones. It's not really the reason they're not going to be successful. Yeah, okay.
All right, Josh asked something. First, I want to say a bunch of you have been asking if this is going to be saved. Yes, as soon as this is over, it'll be posted to the actual Rapzilla feed. And if you wait a couple of weeks, because I'm behind, I actually edit down and condense the videos a bit, and it'll be uploaded to YouTube. So if you want to wait, or if you want to watch it right after, it'll all be there. Josh said, you're addressing the results of the systems, but not the actual systemic issues.
Well, that's not true. I didn't take my pistol out, put it to your head and rob because of the system, fam. That's lame to me. I can't say that. Let me tell you something. Let me tell black men something too. This conversation, and no disrespect to you, brother, but I'm just, again, as a black man who, hold on. Let's run down the list. My mother died when I was 4 years old. My father was absentee on dope. He comes back into my, while I'm in grade school, my brother gets killed, shot 3 times in the chest, pushing my female cousin down on the floor. Bang, bang, bang. He catches 3 to the chest. No marches for him, as you might imagine, right? My other brother got shot coming home from work. So again, I didn't grow up in a family full of thugs. In my crib, the violence was still so prevalent, right? And then my father comes back into my life, 16 years old, telling me, oh, I got AIDS and I'm dying. I'm so high on the phone, gold teeth, dreads in my mouth, I hold my mouth and laugh at his death. I laugh. Literally, I held the phone. And we end up getting cool, but I'm just trying to give some background. And so when you talk about the results, right? So somebody tell me this. Why were African American marriage rates higher after slavery and before the 1960s? Why? If fatherlessness, as people say, if the drug war is responsible for fatherlessness, then why were families more together during Jim Crow? I'm just saying, here's the thing. I'm down to address systemic inequities. You go to Grow the Heck Up website, you'll probably find that I have more thorough racism conversations before, with all due respect, before Rapzilla, Jam, before anybody was talking about race. Yeah, I was popping it off. Because I never was touring like that. So I never had to be sensitive to the white evangelical. We were always like the underground, grimy, say what we want kind of guy. So that being said, I talk about systemic inequities, school to prison pipeline, redlining. I'm in real estate, familiar with that history. However, the narrative of personal responsibility in the black community has changed. It was like, be your best and then still fight the racism. Now, there were no people celebrating debauchery and criminality in the black community. So I would like for someone to answer that question. What happened to black families? Black families were stronger after Jim Crow than they were during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. As a matter of fact, census records show that even up until the 1940s, marriage rates for black people were higher than that of white people because it was something they couldn't have. It was something they esteemed, so they did it often. What happened? What changed? So I think people have good ideas, but I don't always know if they have the historical reference. Like you hear these ideas that, oh, if you're against minimum wage, you hate poor people. Right. You ever heard that, Justin? Right. Yeah. Like if you're against raising the minimum wage, then you got to be either racist or you hate poor people or you're greedy. Not knowing that the Davis-Bacon Act, a piece of legislation passed, the Minimum Wage Act was passed to protect white workers and disenfranchise black people because black people had control of their labor. The year before the Minimum Wage Act was enacted was the last year that black unemployment, some people don't even believe this, that black unemployment was lower than white unemployment because black people control their labor. So when you go look up the Davis-Bacon Act, you will see that it was written exclusively to protect white workers. And so I'm just saying that make sure you got the right point of reference. Sometimes you'll hear an idea or someone have an opinion and you'll assume so much about that person not knowing where they're coming from. So I'm just saying.
Drew Beck said, there are a lot of problems in the black community that stem from slavery still affecting us today. Not an excuse, but not to be ignored.
I mean, like what though? I don't say that because there are none. I just want to hear which ones. Because I remember when all black people wanted to do was read. I remember we just wanted to read because they didn't let us read. How much Netflix you watch? Come on now. Let me tell you something. When I read, listen, man. Listen. When I get it in, bro, like when I see this is the FBI file, everything they had on Malcolm X. And I'm sure you'll probably imagine I can keep reaching. When I read what they were talking about, it's not the same narrative. They were all about empowerment and personal responsibility, all about exalting values that benefited the community. So how do we know? You can't walk up to the projects and say everybody's here because of racism. You have to take things a little bit more nuanced than that because people have made decisions. And if white privilege is the ultimate thing, then why do Jews and Asians make more than white people? Right. For reference, see Amy Chua, The Triple Package, great book on the rise of immigrant groups in America. Nigerians make up less than 2% of the black people in America, but they make up a quarter of Harvard's black business graduates. Why? Right. Culture matters. And I don't like the narrative that black people don't have agency. Yes, even in difficulty, even in resistance, even with racism and discrimination. You're sitting in Starbucks blogging about racism. This is not your great granddaddy struggle. You buy stocks on your cell phone with the push of a button, man. So I'm like, you asked me about COVID. Maybe I'm just an opportunity minded person. Because I'm not trying to police what people feel. For me, the question is, to what degree does racism have the ability to hinder or hamper my life? Not how you feel, because people hate me for all kinds of reasons. You know, the young lady talked about growing up, and this is why I just wonder how much of CHH is really, really, really from the hood like that for real. You talk about walking in somewhere and feeling uncomfortable. How about I grew up in a culture where you walk in, it's our job to make you uncomfortable. You know what it is over here, homie. Who you here to see? You pressing you in my building, we deep. You pressing the elevator button, I'm this close to you. Whole culture built on bullying and intimidation. And then we don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about the suspension rates for black kids without addressing the behavior. So look, I say we don't know until we try. You don't know what kind of ceiling you hit until you try. If you look at the statistics, Jews and Asians outperform white people. If white privilege is the ultimate, what is the reason for that? Their culture is different. And there are a lot of black people who've brought into American mediocrity. And of course, black people are further behind, so the gap persists. But if you haven't noticed something, white fatherlessness is going up. If you haven't noticed, white divorce is going up. If you haven't noticed, white drug use is going up. Why? Because you know what? If two planes are flying in the sky and they both start to fall, yeah, sure. The one at lower altitude is going to crash first, but the whole thing is crashing. American mediocrity is the reason why. And you can't see it when you focus on the disparity. because you don't really see how white households are being destroyed, and the same agenda is being pushed on them. So I'm just saying, man, get your family together and get some money out here or something.
All right, I'm gonna grab one more from the comments, and then we'll move on.
Yes, sir.
Josh says we can't pull ourselves up by our bootstraps if we don't have boots.
Yeah, but you're talking to me on $1,000 phone. So let's leave the old narratives where they lie, shall we? You're talking to me on probably $1,000 phone. What are we talking about? We eat out more than ever. We got 2 and 3 and 7, 8, 9, 10 in devices. We have so much capability and power. My wife has a 7th grade education, grew up, had a teen pregnancy. Now she created 2, 3 streams of income based on what she's learned from her phone and her computer. I don't know anything about no boots or anything like that. Right. One of the most successful people I know calls himself an ex-crackhead. I would never call him that, but that's what he calls himself. Now his company's worth $1 million. So I don't know anything about not having any boots or anything like that. I think you don't have any vision. I think because if Malcolm X came back and saw the internet, I think he would be a different kind of animal than the average American. I don't think he would be as concerned with the fact that LeBron won a chip last night. No disrespect. Come on, but let's just keep it real. People look at Mark Cuban, people take these Mark Cubans and these Jeff Bezos and they make them a poster child for white privilege, not really acknowledging that these people are exceptions among everyone. You listen to Damon John and Mark Cuban talk on Shark Tank. Americans don't think like that, buddy. Do you understand? Master P, Damon John, Jay-Z, Mark Cuban, they all have more in common than the average American. Does your kid know how to invest in stocks? Does your kid know what a business is? Does your kid know why big corporations don't pay taxes? Come on now. I'm just saying, what do you, I don't even understand what people want other people to do, to be honest. Because I got this from the mud, have no college degree, had to get everything I had, like, what can I do? How can I do it? So I'm just saying, man, all of that, we don't have boots. What are you talking about? Where are you guys at? Just saying, we don't.
This is my last question on the subject. So obviously the comments right now are super divided.
One more, if I may. I love this.
Yeah,
somebody said he acting like systemic racism hasn't modernized and changed with the times too. See, but that's the problem. Oh, I love that you say that, because it has. Let me acknowledge your point. Systemic racism has changed with the times, but it's also more dependent upon your choices as well. There are traps that are set for the poor. High fees in the bank, high interest rates. There are traps that are set for the poor. But there are more ways to not be poor than there ever have been in the history of the whole entire world, though. Right. I don't know. Maybe I just see the cell phone as this whole nother thing. I'm from the projects, and I took my first Harvard class online at iTunes University. The access that we have to power, knowledge with, and here, let's get back to the Bible. What does the Bible say knowledge is? The Bible say knowledge is power. It's not white folks' fault you spend all your time watching Netflix and Marvel reruns. It's people out here getting it. Watch this. What would another language do to your income? You can learn another language on the app Duolingo. Any language you want, and probably matriculate into a whole nother atmosphere in the space of the job you already have. From your cell phone laying in your bed at night. Right. But Americans aren't built like that. We want the American convenience that a lot of us think white people have. Right, you're going to get those mediocre results. You know why? Because my wife's whole family is white. And when I go over there, bro, I hear stories about growing up with no shoes in the woods, man. I hear stories about, like, somebody not going to the dentist till they 40 years old, man. I'm like, oh, no, you got it. Like, you ain't had no shoes? Oh, wow, you got it. They grew up country, and they are white. And I like the trajectory of my life as a black man that I like you more than I like theirs, no disrespect. So I'm just saying, man, you're not disadvantaged. Somebody told you was disadvantaged, and you don't really know the power you have in your hand. It's not white people's fault, because that's another thing. That's another thing too. I don't see this white greatness that people are talking about. When I go to Whataburger or I go to Chick-fil-A and I see the white guy behind the counter saying, "Welcome to what," you see Benjamin Franklin, you see Elon Musk, you see, like, what do you see? And what do you see for your own life? You don't see the vision and the path to success in America? It might be where you're spending your time. It might be who you're listening to. Might need to turn off Sean King and put on Damon John or something. I don't know.
All right. So let me say this. So in the 18 episodes prior to this one,
yeah,
I have all these people, and I didn't do this purposely. Just 18 people that are kind of on the same page with things. And you're here stirring the pot now. So what is to say that you're right and they're wrong, or are they right and you wrong and you're wrong? Like where should the person who's kind of looking for answers, should I believe what the majority is saying? Because I know them. I love this I'm face to face with them. I believe them. I see what they're saying. But now I have you, also a black man, sharing an experience that's completely different.
Love this.
So how do we do that?
The one experience that, and I'm just guessing because I've been around CHH for a while, I don't think that being from the hood is an extra stripe, but I think it affords whatever it affords, right? A lot of people probably not from the projects. It's different from being like in the hood. My mom took me to church, and so I'm from the hood. And versus like you're on the block with the hustlers and the killers. So that might give me a different perspective as a Christian, maybe. The other side of it is this: don't start with either of us. Don't start with how compelling either argument is. Go look at the data for what we say. Go what backs this up? Unarmed black men are being shot recklessly by the cops. Okay, let me ask you, Justin, how many black people unarmed were shot in 2019 if you had to take a guess?
If I had to guess, I really have no idea. 50, 100?
Yeah, 20.
20.
Right. Yeah, right. Exactly. That right there. That was another watershed moment for me when Colin Kaepernick was kneeling and I was feeling it, and I started looking at some data and I realized that only 16 unarmed black men were shot by the police that year. That does not negate police brutality, because police brutality is different from someone being killed at the hands of police. However, how many black men have been killed by homicide, though? Do you have any idea?
A lot.
Probably about 7,000 annually. Largely killed by other black men. But here's the difference. One is not being promoted on the radio. As a matter of fact, the corporate sponsors are all for it. Nike, everybody, Netflix, and everybody's in on it. Black Lives Matter. Let's tell everybody. When we gonna hit the block and tell them gangsters done? Right. When we gonna go tell that 2% of the black community that's committing the violent crime, holding our neighborhoods hostage, who get to the top and promote this music and glorify it, and yet send their kids to private school? When we gonna tell them? Because they're the ones that are taking the majority of black life, putting life at the most disadvantage, in my opinion. And I was one of those menaces, and I'm accountable to it. And I was a fool, and I was an idiot for it. I was a part of that destruction. So look at the data. See what bears out. They did a study in 1996 to say, and this is not to negate racism at all, because I've experienced racism at the hand of police. But I tell you, they did a study in 1996, the driving while black. You ever heard that phrase?
Yes.
Right. They did a study in New Jersey. Go look up what I'm saying. I think it was Christine Whitmer was the governor. Go look up what I'm saying. They did a study in 1996 to prove that driving while black was really a thing. And it may have been, but you know what they found, Justin? They found that blacks in that area were more likely to have infractions, whether it be no seatbelt, no tail light. They were so disappointed with the results of the study that they went back and tried to do it again. So I'm not saying racism ain't real. I'm saying you're not getting the whole story. And if you're honest, though, about what the culture is and what it promotes, then you come to whatever conclusion you come to. And I don't walk around tucking my tail, kissing anybody's behind when I walk in anywhere. And even though getting followed in stores, really, like that's so light in the grand scheme of what I don't know what you. Again, maybe some people just want to like live life unbothered, but I don't know about that. I grew up hurting people. Like I grew up terrorizing my neighborhood, right? So I have a humility to the fact that people are crap. And sometimes the person treating you like crap is just a jerk. Sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with your race. And I think like that sometimes. I walk into a bookstore or something like that, somebody give me some funny energy. I'm like, but then I think like, I know a lot of white people that are a-holes too, man. And you could just be an a-hole right now. So I just don't think that everything that people call racism is racism all the time. All
right. So let me say two things and you can respond. And then I might actually have to end this because I think my phone is going to die.
Anytime you're ready, bro. You know me, I start and stop whenever you say.
All right. So this idea of black on black crime.
Right.
When it's really, if you think about it, a proximity type thing. And shout out to James Garden in there. Well, because, and let me get to my second thought and then you respond to. But, you know, there's going to be predominant black crime in a black neighborhood as there would be white crime in a white neighborhood, Hispanic, Asian, so on and so forth. So that would make sense. And then the other, what was the other thing? I'm sorry. Too many thoughts. I had something else. All right, well, stick with that first.
I think,
and then I'll get to the other one if I remember.
I hear the proximity argument frequently, but I think it's, again, one of two things. Either somebody's not being honest or somebody's not being, I don't know, looking at the reality. Because, okay, so let's keep playing the game. What other race loses as many people to homicide? If proximity is the reason, right? Surely we should be able to look in the Asian community. Surely we should be able to look in the Indian community and find the same numbers proportionately, right? Because it's not, oh, it happens here too. It's what's the proportion? What other group of people degrade themselves with the name that black people were given to degrade them? when Latinos, you know, I've heard Latinos joke around with the SPIC word. I don't know if that's offensive to somebody, right? But really, they say the N-word. We took the word and made it a badge. And even that was co-opted and done by powers that be. We talk about we took it back. You didn't take it back. Richard Pryor and black exploitation films gave you the N-word. Richard Pryor goes to Africa, comes back, say you'll never call another black man the N-word. Too late. He started it already, though. But I digress. So how does the proximity account for the proportion? This is where we start to get dishonest, because here's the thing, Justin. If black people experience in America has been unique, whenever anyone tries to say the Irish were slaves too, the natives were killed in this way, black people are very quick, rightfully so, to say, no, our experience is different, unique, prolonged, all of that, right? We were kidnapped from the homeland, all kind of stuff, right? So why are people so averse to acknowledging that there are a particular set of problems that have come with that? A particular set of pathologies that did not start with black people, but that are real and that only black people can fix. Bob Marley quoted Marcus Garvey in the song. He said, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. White people can't set your mind free. See, this is what I'm saying. We know the government can pay back the money, but the government can't fix your 6 baby mamas. That's a cultural thing only you can do, right? The government can't fix out of wedlock births for whites or blacks. So there are only some things that are only in the power of our hand to do, no matter who loves us. So the onus is on us. And here's where it starts to get inferior to me. You expect the police officer who's paid by money to love your community more than the person who lives in the community. And I know people think that's a sound argument where they say, yeah, but they're getting paid. I can't not, quote unquote, excuse my language, cover the ears of the babies if you're listening. I can't not kill a nigga if you don't pay me. That's an inferior moral standard. You are supposed to love your community more than everybody. So don't give me that nonsense that, oh, but they're being paid though. You mean to tell me we can't expect black people to have love and fidelity in their communities unless they're being paid? Well, why do the Indians got it? Why wouldn't the Nigerians come over here? Their culture is different and produces different results. I'm just saying. And so, but to your point, the proximity does not account for the ratio. Right. Because again, go look at the homicide rates among all races and then come back and tell me, okay, well, proximity accounts for some of it, right? Because you're more likely to be killed by somebody you know and somebody who looks like you. Fine. What accounts for the rest of it? Could it be that young black men are listening every day? Young black kids are listening every day to nigga, you ain't nothing. I kill you, nigga, like it's nothing. Now, could it be? I know that's what made me want to catch a body.
Okay, I remembered the other thing I wanted to say. Pertaining to police brutality and that.
Right.
Shouldn't the police be held at a higher standard than your average day-to-day person? Or would you consider police to just be day-to-day people who happen to have their job?
I think to have that standard in man is a foolish standard to begin with. I don't have no standard for anybody that I don't have for myself. I don't live in that world. The highest standard that there is to be is for me. It's not no, yo, I'm wilding out, but yo, he the president. I said, never, nothing like that. Like, I know I'm crazy, but I don't think like that. Whatever higher standard there is to have, it should be held. Particularly, watch this though, when the standard is so commonplace among other cultures. You don't got to do white, black. Do Indian and Asian. Do other cultures that come from here, from Africa and South America. We have a cultural family problem in America, coupled by our experience with racism, and that's a reality only black people can fix. So no, I don't believe anybody should love. Watch this. You know what that's like? That's why I believe in guns. So you mean to tell me that police should care more about protecting my home than I do? It's kind of what you're saying, but how unrealistic of an expectation is that? I don't have that expectation. So what do, Voss? The police are doing whatever. You coalesce and build your families because you can't have a strong community without strong families, without men who have children and wives and are accountable to how that household is, and the community holds them accountable. You can't have a strong community, and you will always be subject to oppression. So on the racism and police brutality that does exist, you need to get strong, build up, and buy the block, because politics is money, which is strange to me that the social justice warriors don't talk economic empowerment. You buy politicians. What game are we playing here? Just saying. You strengthen your community. You strengthen your taxpayer base. Watch how quick certain things start happening. I'm just saying, it's not that I'm not fighting. I'm just fighting it different. Mm-hmm. I'm fighting in a whole different way, fam. Yeah. I need lawyer money. That's how I'm fighting.
Czar Josh says he wants to go live with you after this or tomorrow or something to discuss.
If you ain't picking up what I'm putting down, you definitely get served. You know what I'm saying? It's all good.
Czar Josh is a friend of the show. I've had him on here.
Yeah, respect to you, good brother. Let's match.
Very sharp guy. So
let's match wits and flank swords. I'm for it.
I would like to see that.
Capitalism is based on racism. Yeah, I don't know. I can't. I don't see that. I just can't see that capitalism is based on racism. Capitalism allows for racism if that's people's moral compass. But yeah, I don't see that either. Yeah.
All right, Voss.
Yeah. You
go ahead.
You use money for politics, man. So I'm not saying don't change it. I'm saying, like, that's another thing too. How come? Last thing. Why is it that the protesters want to tear everything down and they're not running any candidates? They're running a couple. They ran Ilhan. They ran AOC. These people, AOC auditioned for her role, but that's a different story. Why aren't they talking about taking the power, right? Like, power to the people is supposed to be run candidates, right? No, they want to burn it down, tear it down, make this person quit, and all of this kind of stuff. And I know this is not everybody. Because I know people who are on the opposite side of what I believe that are putting in work in their community. That's another thing too. I'm long-winded, but sorry about that. I go like, see, one of my clients is hitting me right now, but I'll get back at them in a second. Yeah, but I guess I'll stop there and I'll just say, oh my goodness. Let's listen. I stopped inviting people to go live because nobody does. So if this gentleman wants to bring me back out, I'll discuss with him anytime he's ready. He said this is literally Fox News crap. And I want everybody to pay attention to this type of clown narrative this dude is kicking. He said Fox News crap, and I'm quoting Bob Marley, Malcolm X. And let's see, that's brainwashed to me. Because here's the thing I want to remind every Christian in here. Everything you believe is somebody's narrative. When somebody says something, you can easily say, oh, that's that reform talk. That's that charismatic talk. Oh, that's that liberal talk. Oh, that's that Republic. Everything is that's that Hebrew Israelite stuff. Deal with the merit of what the person is saying. Address the facts and the points and the data and the stats. Labeling it with some old ideology and using that to dismiss the validity of what someone said when they're coming with facts, it's not the wave. It's not the wave. Deal with the validity, because everybody is somebody's talking point. Is it true or not? Sit.
Are you guys going to go live now? Josh, you able to go live now? Cadence, I wasn't kidding about my phone dying. I'm at 10%. All right, Voss, I'll give you the final thought is, to kind of just clear from everything there, what are your, your hopes and looking forward to coming out of this year into 2021? What would you like to see from this nation, just from the people and just everyone?
Man, I don't know, man. I don't know if I have any desire of what I like to see in other people, because the times are the times. The Bible said men will increase because of the overflow of wickedness. The love of hearts will grow cold because of the overflow. So my expectations are kind of tempered. I still have certain hopes in for other areas of society, but really, I just want to tell everybody I'm Lavoisier from Grow the Heck Up, and I'm a Houston realtor. And if you want to do long distance real estate investment, I'm a guy. Believe it.
All right. So then, aside from that plug, where can everyone follow you? Plug anything else you want, and I'll let you go, man.
My name is Lavoisier Cornerstone, aka Realtor Voss. I run Grow the Heck Up, and I'm also a Houston real estate agent. Get at me.
That was easy. That was the least winded thing you said all day, right. and you had the floor to say whatever you want.
Hey, because if you like me, you gonna come find me,
I think people who liked you get to come find you already, and the people who didn't like what you were saying were gonna definitely stay away from you.
Right. There's no plug I could give to make somebody not. You know what I'm saying? So it's all good though. Grace and peace.
All right, man. Thank you for joining the live. It was lively. It was lively in the live for real. But
thank you for having me.
Thank you for being you. And staying true to what you do.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you, sir.
All right, bro. Good night.
My inbox open. Hit me.
Josh, hit him up.